Forgotten prisoners, hostages, lies, and the silence on Palestinian captives. The world speaks in unison. Release the hostages. Every headline, every podium, every leader's carefully scripted statement. The demand is loud, urgent, relentless. But in that same chorus, silence reigns when it comes to the other side. What about the Palestinians? What about the thousands of men, women, children, and elderly who have been taken, shackled, and locked away for decades? For nearly 70 years, Israel has imprisoned Palestinians by the tens of thousands. Today alone, more than 7,000 Palestinians languish in Israeli prisons, including hundreds of children. Some have been behind bars for decades. Some are elderly, denied even basic medical care, and many are held without ever being charged under a policy called administrative detention, where a person can be jailed indefinitely, without trial, without evidence, without justice. Imagine being 14 years old, arrested in the middle of the night, blindfolded, interrogated without your parents, beaten until you confess to throwing a stone. That is the reality for Palestinian children. UNICEF has documented systematic abuse of minors in Israeli detention. Imagine being a mother, given birth behind bars, shackled to a hospital bed, your newborn taken from you within hours. That has happened to Palestinian women again and again. And yet world leaders, those who claim to defend human rights, say nothing. They do not demand, release the Palestinian prisoners. They do not cry, free the children from the cells. They do not call for, end 70 years of captivity. Instead, they proclaim the ultimate hypocrisy. We will not recognize Palestine as a state, not even for a two-state solution, unless Hamas releases the hostages. Think about that. The recognition of a people's existence treated not as an inherent right, but as a bargaining chip. A nation's dignity dangled on a string, made conditional on the actions of others, while its people rot in prisons and bleed under bombs. And here lies the darkest lie. Israel, with one of the most advanced intelligence and surveillance systems in the world, claims it cannot locate hostages in Gaza. This is a state whose drones can strike moving vehicles in foreign countries with pinpoint accuracy. A state whose technology spies on phones, emails, movements across the globe, and yet they would have us believe they cannot find hostages in a strip of land only 41 kilometers long. It is not that they cannot find them. It is that the hostage cry has become the shield for something far more sinister. The excuse for the bombing of homes, schools, hospitals, the justification for mass starvation, siege, and slaughter. The pretext for the genocide of an entire people before the eyes of the world. And let us not forget this truth. The same leaders who demand hostages be freed are complicit in blocking aid to Palestinians. Food, medicine, and water denied to a starving, besieged population. If they truly cared for the hostages, would they starve them as well? Would they deny them medical care? Would they cut off the very lifelines that could keep them alive? And what of the endless bombing? The destruction raining down day and night? Do they not know, do they not admit that surely many of these hostages have already been killed under the rubble by the very bombs Israel drops in the name of rescuing them? This is not a rescue. It is annihilation. Since 1967, Israel has imprisoned over 800,000 Palestinians, almost 20% of the entire population. Nearly every family knows the pain of captivity. Entire generations have grown up with their fathers, mothers, or siblings in prison. But this reality is erased from the global stage. The hypocrisy is staggering, because the story of captivity is not one-sided. The story of suffering is not selective. Palestinians, too, are hostages. Hostages to an occupation that has spanned generations. Where are the tears for the Palestinian child who spends his youth behind bars? Where is the outrage for the elderly woman imprisoned without trial? Where is the urgency for the thousands who will never see justice in their lifetime? The world demands freedom for some, but chooses silence for others. And so the question must be asked, Do we only value freedom when it serves the powerful? Do we only hear cries for justice when they fit a narrative? True humanity cannot be conditional. True justice cannot be selective. And freedom cannot belong to one people while denied to another. For almost 70 years, Palestinians have cried out from their cells, but the world has looked away. And now, while the world chants, "Release the hostages," Israel uses those words as cover to burn Gaza, to starve its children, to erase its people. They lie to the world. They demand sympathy. They parade themselves as the eternal victims, while the real victims are Palestinians, bombed in their homes, buried in rubble, starving in silence, imprisoned in their own land. If we demand freedom, it must be for all. If we demand release, it must include the forgotten. If we demand justice, it must not exclude Palestine, because justice denied to one is justice denied to all. And let it be said, the blood of Palestinians flows not because Israel cannot find its hostages, but because genocide was always the plan. And the greatest tragedy is this: world leaders stand on podiums, pretending to broker peace, pretending to care for justice, while openly declaring that Palestine will never be recognized unless conditions are met, conditions that strip away the humanity of an entire people. They cry for hostages whose faces are shown on every screen, but they refuse to cry for the Palestinian child whose name the world never learns, whose life is cut short, whose story is buried beneath the rubble, whose only crime was being born Palestinian. That is the heartbreak. That is the silence. That is the truth.